Schweigen der hochqualifizierten Sprecher. Und ich freue mich ganz, ganz besonders, dass ich jetzt Hartwig Hoffmann ankündigen darf von EY Partner Tax Technology. Hartwig leads EY Switzerland Tax Transformation and Technology Service Practice. He has more than 20 years of experience in advising large on mid-sized multinational companies in international tax matters with a focus on Swiss in an outbound structures working in various industries, including pharmaceutical, telecommunications, software, high technologies and industrial markets. A very warm welcome to Hartwig. Vielen Dank, ich switche auf Deutsch. Du bist im Englischen natürlich fließend, weil ihr eure Betriebssprache sozusagen, also die Firmensprache, alles in Englisch habt. Ihr seid dann natürlich viel trainierter, als ich das jemals im Moment sein kann, weil bei mir switcht es mal brauche es mal nicht. Also bitte zu verzeihen, dass ich mich im Englischen aufhalte. Hartwig, die Bühne gehört dir. Wir haben nachher noch ein paar Minuten, wo wir sprechen können. Bitte schön.
Thanks so much and welcome everybody to my presentation on digitalization of tax and what it means for your personal tax return. I would like to start with a quote of Albert Einstein, who once said, "The hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax." And given that fact, I will not explain you today how bitcoins are taxed and the taxation rules for ICOs. And actually, also Einstein did not mention that when he talked really about tax. He was complaining in that moment about his personal income tax return and that it doesn't follow any logic. And actually, that is what digitalization tax is about, or to some extent it's about, is that to simplify the preparation of the personal income tax return. But that's only one aspect. Here we see a bit more aspects around that. So one observation is that tax or digitalization is one of the main accelerators for changes in the tax world. And to give you an example, look at Swiss bank secrecy. That was around for nearly about 100 years. And it felt actually, once it was possible, that somebody took client data of hundreds and thousands of clients, put them on a small CD, put them into his pocket, and sent it over to the German tax authorities. 50 years ago, the same amount of information would needed lorries to carry big paper files to that. So in my view, digitization has took a part, at least a part, of bringing the bank secrecy down. Another point is how we tax these digital services, and you may have heard about the digital tax discussion that goes on in the EU and worldwide. But that's only one part. As I said, I would like to focus more on the third aspect here, which is what the tax authorities do. How do they actually use digitization to improve the tax administration, to improve transparency, and by that, due to this transparency of the taxpayer, it has an impact on all taxpayers, means all of us. When we look at the tax administration and the level of digitization, E&Y has prepared an approach that brings us 5 different levels, 5 different categories, and that we cluster the maturity level of tax authorities. Now, when we start with level 1, that is just e-filing. You would say that's not so much digitalization, but actually when you look at the landscape, and we will do that the next slide, you will see that a lot of countries are still on that level. Level 2 is e-accounting. What does that mean? You may have heard about the e-balance. So what it means is that you provide the tax authorities data in a standardized form, and this data allows them to analyze it and come up with questions of any inconsistencies they recognize in your data. When you then go to level 3, e-match, it actually means that the authorities pick data from different sources, that they use data from other tax administrations, that they use data from social security departments. They match it and compare that to the tax return. And if there are inconsistencies, they would come to you and ask you to explain them. At level 4, it gets even further, that is e-audit. So they get online data, live data, and right away they check how that works. That's a particular topic in the field of value-added tax. And the final level is level 5. And with level 5, income tax returns go away. Level 5 means the authorities get access to your data. You do not need to file an income tax return anymore. They just send you an invoice, and then they say, you have 30 days to complain, and otherwise please pay. Now, when we have a look at the landscape, this is quite amazing. The US is still at level 1. The country of the big tech giants is still at level 1. While if you see countries like Russia or Brazil, they are already at level 4. Why is that? The reason is quite different. The reason is quite simple. The reason is that these countries have a huge problem with the shadow economy. They have a huge problem to collect their taxes. And therefore, for them, it's just a much bigger business case to invest in technology, to get more transparency on their taxpayers, and to increase their tax revenues. So this is why these countries invest heavily in technology and are on that level. And as you can see, Spain is in one area already at level 5. That's the area of VAT, and we will come to that later. Now here's a look at the European landscape. Where are we in Europe? You see, as we have it on the map, Russia and Spain are far ahead. And the bigger countries are more or less at level 1 or level 2. It's even the smaller countries here as well who went already far on the path of tax digitization. When we look at Switzerland, here we got it. When we look at Switzerland, we consider that still as level 1 to a large extent. And in Switzerland, there are some e-filings, in particular when it comes to filings with the federal authorities. There's online VAT filing in the meantime. You can file your personal income tax return. But we didn't went further in Switzerland. We don't have that e-accounting, we don't have e-balances, and to a large extent the reason is since we have 26 different cantons, and they have a hard time to agree on common standards for tax reporting. And therefore we are still at a quite low level, which is amazing since for 20 years I am filing my Swiss tax return online with an application of the tax authorities. But from there on, not much actually happened. Germany is considered also to be level 1 and 2, but sometimes they already go to level 3 in some areas. They have this e-balance. It was a huge topic. So you need to prepare all your counts in an e-format and file it with the tax authorities. And here is a very recent example of the German tax authorities. In my view, it's a bit actually surprising, if not shocking. What you can do in Germany is you go online to the so-called Elster platform, and there you can enter your personal file. And what the tax authorities have done is that they already collected all the data they have around you. So they collected the data that they have from your employer. They collect data from insurance companies. They bring it all together in your personal file, and when you go online, you can see it. And with a click of the button, they put it into your personal tax return. So this is quite convenient, but at the same time, you are quite visible, you are quite transparent transparency in everything you do. And I think most people will be amazed what the tax authorities already have in terms of data when it comes to their taxation. Russia, as said, is also a good example. We consider them at level 4. This is in particular the case for VAT, but they also created a very interesting system. And in my view, that's also a kind of new level. In Russia, they set up an own tax regime for self-employed people, and they support that by an app. Here you see the picture of that application on the App Store. And how I understand it works is that if you are self-employed and you issue an invoice, you put it on the app creates the invoice and sends it to your customer, and they just deduct 6% of the invoice amount, and that is your income tax. The usual income tax in Russia is around 15%, but with that new tax system, you are around 6%. You only pay 6%, but on revenue and not on income. However, the new thing here is that they changed their tax system to make it compliant to the technology and make it simple to use with the technology. And when you look at social media, it seems to be a good success. I mean, in Russia, people in the Western world may say what you see in their social media may be driven more by the authorities. But anyway, what you see there is quite good feedback on this application. And it seems that with that new tax regime, they really made a step forward in getting people to pay their tax. When we come to Spain, which is already at level 5, it gets also a bit surprising, if not worrying. Spain has set up in the VAT field the so-called SII. And what does that mean? It's the continuous control of the taxpayer. If you're a larger company in Spain, if you have more than 6 million of annual revenue, then you are obliged to have an interface from your accounting system to the tax authorities. And what you need to do is, if you issue an invoice, and big companies do that obviously all the time, after 4 days, you need to transmit all the invoice data to the tax authorities in a common format. And what they will do is actually they will look through your files, they will analyze it with their tools, and if they find any inconsistencies, they come to you and say, please explain, or they even just send you an invoice. We have recognized your filing was too low, you need to pay another so and so much money. And you have some days to react on that. If not, you owe that amount. So this is really the next level. And what is the reason for that? What is the reason for this investment and that transparency? As mentioned, it's tax fraud. In the European Union, the estimates go to around 50 billion euros that get lost every year with VAT fraud, the so-called VAT carousel, or what we call the missing vendor schemes, and with that, around 50 billion euros get lost. And this is why these countries like Spain, are putting so much money into that area. And other countries are following. Another example that is quite recent is Poland. There you are completely online, and you need to approve everything, and everything gets approved in terms of your invoices within 24 hours. So the tax authorities have complete visibility of what you are doing and complete visibility of all your transactions. Now, when we now make the turn to the blockchain and our topic for today. So this is one of the main ideas where blockchain can help. Blockchain technology can help to prevent tax fraud. And this is the EU loss of VAT that I already mentioned, the 15 billion. There are completely different ideas around that. The European Union is currently doing a huge effort in picking up with blockchain technology. And one part of their project is that they want to use a blockchain to combat that fraud. That's to some extent all around having clear identification for VAT purposes, cross-border. They are thinking about an import one-stop shop, so that would mean that every payment, every import cross-border, any delivery cross-border need to be announced and reported to a common system, and the system will check who the recipient is, and the system will make sure that no tax get lost. Another idea is a complete VAT register, where you then have automated payments, meaning that if there's VAT on your invoice and you use the blockchain, you can maybe use smart contracts to pay the VAT. Or the VAT coin, that's also an interesting idea. The VAT coin would mean that instead of paying VAT, when you get an invoice paid, you just create a coin for VAT. And with that coin, you can go to the tax authorities. What is the reason for that? The reason is that then you only get a refund for VAT that has actually paid, and that it is paid was evidenced by that coin. And here we see another quite interesting project or application that is more, again, in the income tax field. That is something that you and I could use. So this is about reporting income that you may have gained with trading Bitcoins and other coins on the blockchain. So if you may know that there are completely different rules about taxation of Bitcoins and Bitcoin profits. And with that app, you would connect your wallet to the app, and the app would directly give you a report on the income tax consequences of your trades. And this app can meanwhile create reports for 3 countries, US, Switzerland, Germany. But you can expand that to the whole world actually once you have a systematic and know the rules. And so this app would directly put your income into the tax return and would prepare the enclosure to the tax return for that income. And this actually shows us also what is possible going forward. If we look at tokenization of assets, and you may have heard about the project of Daura, which actually brings shares on the blockchain. If you look at that, you can actually go further from trading income from Bitcoin to usual investment income. If you have investments on the blockchain, it's quite easy to have the model for taxation, connect the data, and the system will then prepare your tax reporting for all your investments. And the next stage would be that, and that's also one of the topics of Daura, you can pay the dividends through the blockchain. If the shares are on blockchain, you can pay the dividends on the blockchain. And that would mean that you can also give the authorities your public key. They can go through your information and directly issue a tax invoice. That would be a bit unusual, but the possibility is quite easy to see. So that is my point 2 here. You can raise withholding taxes directly on the token. And then you may take that to your personal income tax return. But as you can see from the example from Russia, maybe at one point the authorities say, yeah, we changed the system. We just pick the tax there and everything is fine. Also, with that technology, you could prevent all the tax fraud. And to give you another example, we had this Cum-Ex topic in Germany, where people were able to claim the same tax refund 2 times. So they made share dealings and achieved 2 certificates for withholding tax payments, and then they could get it 2 times. With using that kind of technology, you can actually quite easily match that a refund is only possible for payments that actually have been made. And what does it mean in conclusion? The conclusion is that with a blockchain, the authorities have the possibility to easily get to that level 5. So personal income tax returns will disappear. I think that's for sure. The question is when. And finally, they will lock themselves into the register on the blockchain. They will get your data. You do not need that application anymore where you file your return, that prepares your return. The tax authorities could do that on their side, and then they just send you an invoice. And then it's up to you to say, oh, that invoice is not correct. I don't agree. You need to complain. And that is that level 5. And I think actually when you look at all the investments that authorities put into that in the last years, I think we will reach level 5 earlier than later. And I also think that the blockchain will take a huge part of that and will be really disruptive for the whole tax return industry. And that's actually the point for you. That's the conclusion of my topic. What will happen with your personal income tax return? It will disappear sooner or later. I think more sooner than later. Thank you.
Ja, Martin sage ich, Entschuldigung, Hartwig. Ich bin noch im Kopf ganz woanders gerade, weil es war sehr beeindruckend, was du gesagt hast. Und ich habe gerade noch an Martin gedacht, was er dazu sagte vorhin mit den anderen Dingen, wie man das kombinieren könnte, vielleicht auch mit verschiedenen Anlageprojekten, die man eben hat im Aktienbereich, also alles, was damit zu tun hat, Tokenisierung vielleicht von verschiedenen Dingen. Vielleicht kann man da ja auch, weil das sind ja auch steuerliche Dinge dann hinten dran, weil wenn jemand in die Tokenisierung investiert, nehmen wir an, wir würden weiterkommen mit den Immobilientokenisierungen, dann ist das ja auch ein spezielles Asset, vielleicht vergleichbar mit einem Token bzw. einer Kryptowährung, die dann auch wiederum in das Steuermodell vielleicht mit der App sogar steuerbar wäre.
Yeah, I think that's really the point. I think we should more look at the short term, and there we have all the financial assets. I think the Daura project with the share set is really amazing. Yeah. I mean, once we have the financial instruments on the blockchain, and we are able to pay the investment return out of the blockchain, then it's quite easy to pick up on that. And one point is obviously, that you can prepare your tax returns by that with such kind of apps, but I think that's short term. The authorities are really interested to get the information. And when you look at the situation nowadays, if you have, you can look at your own tax return, I guess, you have some investments, maybe, and some people have large list of investments, and you have enclosure by enclosure, you put it into the return handwritten, and that can all disappear. Since the tax authorities see on the blockchain the transactions, they can probably see what kind of investment return you have, and then it could either go into a real tax return that you sign, or they just tax you. I think there are a lot of possibilities. When we then come to other things like real estate, I think there it may be a bit more difficult, since there we have no kind of withholding tax regime. Yeah. This is typically around just for financial investments. But maybe the tax system changes. At least it will be quite easy, to get out what your income is on these investments.
Also auch der Sprung an sich, wie ihr das jetzt hier gestaltet habt von EY. EY ist ja eher, sage ich, konservativ orientiert, aber das war jetzt ein richtiger Sprung in die Zukunft, was ich dann gelesen hatte, von wegen dieser App, die ihr entwickelt habt, dass ihr eine Blockchain überhaupt entwickelt habt dafür, weil du brauchst ja eine eigene Infrastruktur auch dann dafür. Wie kam es zu so einer Idee?
So the app that we have here, that is not our app actually, but it's actually a company we talk to, and we are quite interested in partnering up with them. And finally at one point we will partner up with such companies, since it will also make our business much more efficient. If people trade more with coins, actually, and we have the possibility to use technology for the tax reporting, we will use that. I think there are 2 aspects to your basic question. I think blockchain was a bit in, I would say, the gray area for the kind of conservative organizations, and that's the same with us. On the other hand, we are quite looking for innovation. I think digitization is one of the big topics of E&Y that we push forward, and I think we always had that kind of bridge between, that kind of area that we do not want to get too much attached to. When ICOs were made in such kind of tax havens, although that's not really what we like to work with, and the technical possibilities. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of these kind of conservative, as you say, organizations, I don't think we are conservative, by the way. No. But I think they are quite interested in the technology and what the possibilities of the technologies are.
Ja, ich wollte nicht sagen, dass ihr seid ja traditionell, sage ich mal, in einem speziellen Geschehen, was Steuern und Verträge und so weiter angeht, ist ja sehr konservativ, also mit Beständigkeit ausgestattet.
Yeah, I would say, we have a responsibility to the financial market, okay. Which we hopefully completely comply with. And that responsibility to the financial market actually makes us a bit critical to everything. That's clear, but that's our role. That's our role in the whole financial world.
Okay. Ich sehe im Moment viele Schlagzeilen, dass größere Firmen oder Konzerne sogar ihr Kapital durchaus in Kryptowährungen mit initialisieren, in Bitcoin zum Beispiel, um Währungssicherung zu betreiben, also intern den Strukturen der Firmen. Seht ihr das auch schon bei EY?
I think, when you look at the whole picture, even if you look at the whole amount of Bitcoin, if you compare that to the rest of the economy, it's quite small. So I think it's hardly possible for a big multinational that has, when you look at the big companies, they have revenues of 20 billion or so. Sure. I think if you compare that to the Bitcoin volume, it's quite small. I think we see that companies invest in Bitcoin, and there are a lot of accounting issues and topics around them since it's just new. How do you value these Bitcoins? I think that's a big topic. How you value, also in ICOs, that's a big topic, how you value the coins. But a lot of interesting topics, but if you compare it to the whole economy and the whole companies, it's still a very small amount.
Okay. Denkst du, die Datensicherheit, die auch hier immer wieder ein großes Thema ist, was Blockchain auch angeht, ist das ein Thema intern von den Global Force, also speziell auf EY auch bezogen, dass mehr und mehr auf die Blockchain dann auch abgelagert wird, weil sie eben bis jetzt nicht gehackt wurde zur Sicherheit?
Yeah, I think we are not already so much on blockchain, but data protection is a huge topic in different areas. I mean, the whole cybersecurity topic is huge for us, also for advising our clients in that area. So cybersecurity, I mean, you read it here and there. I think companies do not really talk about the situations when they were hacked, since it's just not good publicity. But I think 2 months ago, you had just 2 cases in 1 week, also with a big Swiss industrial company that was in the news. So that is a real big topic, and our advising practice is doing a lot in that area. Internally, it's also a big topic, since the data we have, we need to protect them quite carefully, since, I mean, these are really, data in the heart of the organizations we work with. Very confidential data, so we do a lot to protect all that. That makes it sometimes difficult, when we're advising clients, that we have very high security levels. But at the moment, I have not seen that we go there, that the blockchain helps us there.
Okay. Gut. Vielen Dank. Ich habe mir noch eine Frage aufgeschrieben, die will ich aber jetzt noch nicht stellen, weil die wirst du im Chat stellen. Das ist sehr spannend nachher, weil es nochmal die Zusammenhänge auch intern von dem, was wir schon gehört haben, nochmal darstellen. Da bin ich sehr froh, dass du dann da bist, und ich gehe da heute Abend nochmal drauf ein. Aber ich gebe dir vorab schon mal auch dieses Buch von Daniele Ganser, Bestsellerschreiber, in Deutschland mehr bekannt als in der Schweiz, okay. Ich sagte es bereits. Sehr spannende Literatur. Ich denke, du wirst auch sehr viel Geschichtliches erfahren. Er ist ja Historiker und Friedensforscher.
Ich glaube, auch in der Schweiz kennt man ihn sehr.
Ja, mittlerweile schon, aber ich merke
ja sehr häufig.
Aber wenn ich Schweizer treffe und ich frage, ich kenne dir Daniele Ganser, wenn ich nach Deutschland komme,
er war recht oft in der Arena.
Genau. Ausverkauft, also wirklich ein toller Mann. Ich kenne ihn auch persönlich, wie gesagt, er spricht auch. Er wäre gerne dabei gewesen, er ist leider jetzt verhindert gewesen, die 2 Tage. Aber beim nächsten Event, wenn wir das am 24. 25. Februar machen, wo ich dich jetzt schon herzlich einlade, falls du Interesse hast und gerne dabei sein möchtest, Februar, machen wir wiederum so ein Event. Es wird ein bisschen anders gestaltet sein mit anderen Themen, aber du bist breit aufgestellt, also du passt genau wieder dazu, bitte. Und Daniele wird sicherlich da sein, wenn er es zeitlich einrichten kann.
Sehr gut. Vielen Dank.